Rep Radio, an Emory production. Since 2009, our goal has been simple. We support, promote, engage, and inspire the arts community by igniting the ghost light that shines on the stages of the up-and-coming, the unsung heroes, the brilliant writers, and the dynamic designers. Our podcast breaks the fourth wall to give you an inside look at the plays and the players. Stay tuned. Rep Radio is on the air. Today on the podcast, I head over to 1812 Productions to talk about The Roommate, written by Jen Silverman, directed by Harriet Power, and featuring Jen, Childs and Grace Gonglewski. Here's my interview with 1812 Productions, The Roommate. Welcome to Rep Radio. I'm your host, Darnell Radford, and today I am at Plays and Players Theater with 1812 Productions to talk about the upcoming production, The Roommate. Woohoo! And I'm here with three wonderful ladies, Director Harriet Power, and artists Jen Childs and Grace Gonglewski. Welcome back to Rep Radio.
Thank you.
I've been on Rep Radio, so it's been wonderful. So we're at the beginning of our theater season, 2019-2020. And I feel like there are a handful of people I always touch base with at the beginning of the season, and 1812 is one of them. So This is like routine. We're right on schedule. All right, so tell us about The Roommate.
Oh, goodness. Why don't you start, Harriet?
Well, it is a comedy with heart about two women of a certain age. And for the young listeners, that means over 50. It's a play about two people who, when they meet, the last thing they think is that anything is going to change. They're going to remain strangers, and they don't. But we're certainly not going to say what does happen, other than that the complexity of what happens excites, I would say, us, and certainly me, because it reminds us of how hungry we are for surprise and for the new, and what it feels like to fall in love with stuff you never dreamed you'd do.
Yeah.
So it does all that and makes people laugh, and it always makes me cry. So
there are some heartfelt moments.
Yeah.
And so why bring this production to 1812? And then why open the season with it?
Well, that's a great question. It's been something that's been sort of on our radar for a couple of years. And having Grace and I, this is the first time that we've performed together in 13 years. And we kind of came up together doing shows at the Arden. I was Grace's sidekick for many, many, many years. She was the tall, beautiful one. I was the one in the funny underpants. There's something that it feels like a sort of fall play. It takes place in autumn, and you talk about starting the season, even though there's something about the change in the fall season and that cycle that feels like it fits really well with this play.
Yeah.
I'm just excited. Jen Silverman is a playwright whose voice I really admire, and I'm just excited to share this with our audience. I think they're going to dig it.
Cool. So tell us about our leading ladies.
You go.
Our leading ladies, you mean in real life, or the ladies on the stage?
The ladies on the stage.
The ladies on the stage are not these ladies in real life. They are very different from one another. They are suspicious of one another. They are confused by one another. They're sort of like Alabama and Pennsylvania, or parts of Pennsavania, California and North Alabama, looking at each other going, how are you even happening, and what is that all about? And they learn from one another, they surprise one another, and they come to be connected in common and uncommon places. So it speaks to possibility. It speaks to transformation. It speaks to how people can overcome their own prejudices to gain healing.
Yeah. That's great. I also think along those same lines, kind of overcome their own prejudices about themselves. And we all have these stories that we tell ourselves about who we are and why we are the way we are. And I always call it like kind of my life mythology. And to come in contact with somebody who sort of challenges that and says, well, it doesn't have to be that way, sparks a change in you is also really exciting.
And it's been fun that as different as these women are, certainly from these two actors, and really from all three of us, a lot of the essential struggles are universal, not just to women of a certain age, but everybody. Yeah. We all have the tape that plays. I mean, we've sort of had jokes about no apologies. It's good to make mistakes. It's like we don't have to know everything. Yeah. And I think it takes many lifetimes to really learn that lesson. And the play gives you a really good shot and lots of laughs so that you span several lifetimes in 90 minutes.
I guess there are some thought as I was reading the description, I'm thinking, people of a certain age probably have an expectation of not to be introduced to a new roommate. You may have an expectation of certain things happening in your life that you would not have to do this again at this time. So you've got that, and then you have all of your life experience on both sides. Now coming into this time in your life where you are really set in comfort zones. And now you have to go back to, right out of high school or into college when you say, okay, now you're out of your parents' home and you get your first college roommate maybe, or you get your first out of your birth home roommate, and now you have to adjust to how someone else lives. And of course, we start to think of like the Odd Couple, and things like that, but in general, you're just like, this ought to be fun. Especially thinking about they're coming in with so much. And if you're taking over a space that maybe is only a fraction of the overall home, it may accommodate your material possessions, but not all of your baggage that you actually bring along.
Yes, amen. That could be a tagline for this.
Yes.
Plenty of room for your stuff, but not your baggage.
Yes. So, what has been the experience of actually bringing this to life on stage?
I have to say, it has been so great. It's been a really long time since I've been in the room with people that I know so well. I mean, at 1812, we have a tendency to work with a number of the same artists again and again, and so I have long-standing creative relationships with people. But Grace and I have been friends since 1992. Our daughters were born a month apart. They're best friends. We were pregnant together. We've gone through all kinds of things together, and Harriet and I have collaborated on any number of projects over the years. Tom Shotkin, our stage manager, who's the other person who's been in the room with us all the time, he and I have known each other since 95 or something. So it's to start from a place of really knowing each other has allowed for a profound honesty as a part of the process, which is really rare, and there's a lot of trust in the room, I think, and a lot of laughing,
and a lot of three moms talking about moving through our lives, as mothers, as partners, as creative artists, and it's very moving to be with such wise movers and shakers, be able to hear their insights and have them explode in my heart and become, true for me too.
I'm thinking about the last time you and I spoke, Grace, was for A Doll's House Part 2, and we were talking about how a lot of life was sort of factoring into this character you were portraying. And I'm wondering, as you're going through this piece, what sort of moments in your actual life are sort of coming back?
Oh my gosh. Well, there's a line that Robyn has to Sharon at one point, which is, there's great liberty in being bad. And, we were testing that out and thinking about how Robyn's inviting Sharon to the dark side. But what I've really come to is she's saying there's a great freedom in not knowing what the hell you're doing. Like in just saying, you know what, just jump. I don't know what's going to happen, but there's freedom there and there's possibility there. And, Jen alluded to it a little bit, but I think I wanted to be at week 3 when I was in week 2 and beating myself up and then really learning that line for myself, especially at the same time that I have a 16-year-old, that we have 16-year-olds where we're constantly saying, make mistakes, fall. That's the only way you'll learn. And here, physician, heal thyself. It was a very profound movement through last week of saying, it's okay. It's okay. If there's one thing that I've learned, or I should be learning by this age, it's okay to not know everything and to have to figure it out. There's great beauty and power in that, actually.
Yeah. What is the setting like? What is the time frame that we're in? It's
now, and it's Iowa City, Iowa, and it's my character Sharon's home, and she has had to. She's had to find a roommate for financial reasons, and and Robyn from the Bronx,
hot lesbian from the Bronx,
answers her Craigslist ad. At least that's what we're assuming. We're assuming it was Craigslist that got them together. But yeah, so it's now, but it is curiously. It's curiously without technology, There's not a lot of there's some conversation about the internet, etc. But there's not a lot of cell phone use. There's not. So in that way, it feels very human.
Yeah.
It feels like two people forced to be in the same space together, and they can't just kind of retreat to their phones or things like that. There's a different pace to life in the Midwest, I think, that lends itself more to that.
Yeah, I feel like it is helpful to kind of sit and observe a time when we didn't look at our phones every 5 seconds, and we didn't look to fill that empty space with a game or updates on a social platform. And but also at the same time, there's a delay with the lack of technology that complicates communication.
Yeah.
It makes it harder to think like, if you're typing something, yes, all caps, exclamation point.
Yeah.
You must be excited. No, I had the caps lock on. But if you're sitting there with each other and a question is asked and you just say, yes.
Yeah.
It takes on a totally different feeling and mood and vibe.
Yeah.
Right.
And so on. So is this a one act? Is it 2 acts?
It's 90 minutes, no intermission. And anyone who sees it will understand it unrolls. But I don't think of it as a one act so much as a play in one act, if that makes sense. Because it goes a lot of places. It feels very complete.
Yeah.
But it does all pretty well take place in this kitchen. When Jen gave me the script, one of my jolts was I got my MFA, my directing MFA in Iowa City. My son was born in Iowa City. Every official thing he fills out, place of birth, Iowa City, Iowa, and it was just really interesting. I dug through old photos because the fall is so stunning there. Everything's gold and gleaming, and it's a very different place because I moved there after 15 years in California. And so there was a little bit of a microcosm in terms of Grace's character comes to the Midwest without any sense of what goes down there, as I did, and the people I met who'd always been there, they were just wonderful and very different.
Yeah.
So those kinds of clashes I thought were just fabulous. And the mom thing has been big. It's been big for us as friends and fellow artists, and it's a big force in the play.
Yeah.
There's kind of other characters, that's all I'll say, whose presence and personalities we have some sense of. And I think the playwright is very artful in the way she thickens their world with their children.
I thought it'd be fun to talk about past roommate relationships or situations. Can you think of, I guess, some momentous times with roommates, either good or bad?
Nadia Aksakowski. Do you remember Nadia?
Yes, I do.
Somebody.
She stole your voiceover career.
She did. God bless her. She came over to my house and we started talking to each other and we were like, blah, 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 blah. And I knew everything about her, like our whole past history, dark, deep stuff, within 15 minutes. And I wrote to her, I think it was her agent at the time, and I said, so, they just want to know, is there any? And she was like, she's a peppery one. And I remember just a month in being like, she's out. She's fucking out. I'm done with her. And I went to my therapist at the time, and my therapist said, this is a great opportunity for you. You don't want to sleep with her. You're not in love with her. She's another human being. We don't often get the chance to practice living with another human being. You can learn how to set boundaries. You can learn how to not be drawn into her panic. You can learn a number of things that when you have a child and you're trying to live with them, or you have a lover and you're trying to live with them, you're not going to be as free to say, oh, well, in the end, bye-bye. And so I was like, okay. And I lived with her for a year, and I came to love her, and I learned how to set some boundaries, which I didn't really know how to do. So that was a great learning experience. Thank you, Nadia.
Number.
Oh, she's the best. She's the best.
You're quite prepared for that question.
No. It came in, I've had a lot of roommates.
I never thought to actually talk.
And a lot of stories, but that was one of the biggest learning experiences. How about you?
My entire company is based on roommates. It was 1812 Pine Street, and I was one of 5 roommates. And I think I lived there from like 92 to 90, I guess maybe I lived there about 4 years. And I think in that time I had about 25 different roommates. There was a constant, there were 4 bedrooms.
It's like a hostel.
Kind of, yeah. The occasional German tourist. Like we had 2 German tourists show up because an ex-roommate of ours had been to Germany and had like fallen in love with one of them. And so he'd given them this address, and then he'd moved away, but they came and they were like, we're looking for Adam. And like, he's not here, but you can stay if you want. So they stayed for 3 months. But yeah, I lived with, it was always there was always at least one actor, a dancer, a filmmaker, a sculptor, a painter, musician. It was just a place where we laughed a lot, and that's the genesis of 1812. And it was sometimes fabulous, and we would have these epic parties, where we would just get dressed to the nines, and all of the glitterati of the Philadelphia restaurant scene were there. We all waited tables, and at the time we have pictures, I think, of like Fergie way back in the day before he owned half of Philly. Wow. But I don't think I had quite as profound an experience or learning. I think it was just it was an ongoing. It was just an ongoing learning experience in how to share space with people and I fell in love with people there. I fell in love with my husband there. It was a cold winter. We're the only 2 roommates home, and 20 years later, we're still married. So, but yeah, so that was.
Well, I guess I guess that experience for you either supports or sort of opened the door for you to lead a company of artists like this.
Yeah.
Having that sort of diverse blend of creative people around you is something that you keep with you today.
No, totally.
So those are good things.
No, and we and also Pete and I used to, Pete Pryor, who started the company with me and was also an 8 and 12 roommate, we always said, it's a place where we had nothing. We had no money. We were in our 20s. And somehow we managed to make things, like, we didn't ever have enough money for a Christmas tree, so we had a baseball bat, and somebody had left a green glove. And so we would put this glove on top of the bat, and we put my earrings on each of the fingers. And we would stand it up in the corner, and we would sing, "Oh, Christmas bat, oh, Christmas bat, how lovely are your fingers." And it was like, so we made funny things out of nothing. And that is very much what making theater is.
If you don't add a Christmas bat to This Is the Week That Is, you're missing an opportunity.
Somewhere. That's a killer visual. Wow.
So, Harriet, as an accomplished woman of 29 and a half, can you think of a roommate situation that you had in the past?
Oh, God. Well, one of the things I was famous for is I have a brother who doesn't move. And I was the person who was endlessly relocating with many different roommates and taking up way too many pages in everybody's address book before we used our iPhones to just do an edit. Well, when you asked that question, I was amazed we never talked about it. It's a brilliant question. And it immediately made me think that when I graduated college, there was a kind of exodus from the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor to Berkeley. And my boyfriend and I and my two best women friends, who were each other's best friend, and one of them was partnered, all moved to San Francisco. And we were in a tiny apartment in Noe Valley. My boyfriend and I slept. Our bedroom was the living room, which had one of those pull-out couches where the springs were horrible. And you'd try to fold it up with all the blankets, and it was just chaos. And there was one bathroom, and you had to go through one of the bedrooms to get to it. And what was fabulous about that was I made $400 a month and banked half of it.
Oh, wow.
Well, it was a long time ago. but in part, we did it to save money. And it was kind of proof that, get outside, make art, do things, explore, travel, hike. You just need a place to lay your head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was the site of a lot of laughs and a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So that was a good one. I haven't thought about it in years.
It seems like having a roommate, whether one or many, at a younger age would be more exciting than later on in life. You're like I said earlier, set in these kind of ways where you're just like, no, it's 6 o'clock every day at 6 o'clock. I have my thing, and I do my thing, and I sit in that. This is my spot on the couch, and you have friends over? What do you mean? What is this about having friends? We're just supposed to live here and pretend we don't have lives inside this building. So if from the description it shows that there will be that energy, that sort of youthful energy that probably was not expected from Sharon.
Very much so.
Are there any sort of lessons that you've learned from this experience so far, dealing with this piece, that you didn't have sort of walking in?
I don't know if it's lessons that I'm learning, but lessons that I'm reminded of. That whole thing about it's okay not to know. It's okay to be bad. It's okay to, I feel like that is a lesson I'm going to have to continue to learn again and again and again. And it's so nice that it's come up and that we get to say it to each other.
Yeah, the saying part, I think for me was big release and relief in that Harriet said, speak. I don't need you to couch it in anything. I don't want you to apologize. I don't, why can't you just tell me exactly what's happening? And that's something that these women learn. There's so much hiding, I think Robyn does. She has to protect herself, and she's not afraid, but defensive, and she has secrets. And being able to just say, yes, I did this. Yes, this is who I am. No, that's not what, there's great liberty there.
Absolutely, yes. And the other thing is, we're in a very polarized time, as I don't have to say. You can meet people of the opposite political persuasion, and instantly the window slams and the door shuts, and it's easy to write people off for many reasons. And I think the reminder that it's so easy to miscalculate on first impressions. And if you can hang in there, it can be astonishing. I mean, in my own life, there are people that I think, boy, when I met that person, if somebody had told me X amount of time later, a month, 5 years, a decade, and they're going to be one of your most intimate and cherished folks, that lesson feels really timely. And that one has really come up a lot.
Yeah. Any advice for the youngins listening who are entering into roommate situations? We're here in the fall, school's starting up, and this is the time of sort of transition. Any advice you could give to them? Besides, come to the show.
Well,
2 tickets, because theater's more fun with the plus
that's
one.
Right. I think I'd say follow Grace's therapist's advice, because we just dealt with it by drinking and yelling. So not
I would say, honestly, find a spot for yourself that's yours alone, that you can retreat to and take care of yourself before you venture out. And it's great to venture out. It's great to interact. I mean, you have to interact, but keep a little sacred spot for yourself.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add?
Well, the notion that boundaries and openness live in a kind of paradoxical dynamic, there it is. Somehow call on both, sometimes at the same time.
Yes. The production is called The Roommate. It is written by Jen Silverman. It is on stage at Plays and Players Theater, presented by 1812 Productions. If you're listening to this, you can get your tickets now at 1812productions.org and buy more than one, because theater is more fun with a plus one. Harriet Power, Jen, Childs, Grace Gonglewski, it's always a pleasure to sit down and talk with you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Darnell.
Fantastic, Darnell.
Rep Radio continues to be inspired by our community and listeners like you. We are proud to be an Emory production. Visit us online at em3ry.com. Ride with us. Emory is on the move.